folks, there's no need to introduce our next guest because everybody in the recruitment industry should know him. It's a huge pleasure to be sitting here and spending some time with the one and only Gerry Crispin here in RecFest USA. Gerry, you might as well introduce yourself, even though it's unnecessary, because it'd be interesting to know how you perceive of your own self right now and your contribution to the world of recruiting. Who are you? What it is you do?
I got to tell you, I have only one way of thinking about myself, and that is as a lifelong student of recruiting. I really love the fact that at least for the last 30 years, recruiting has been constantly evolving, never perfected, always, a piece away from really having the kind of baselines that everybody agrees on, and best practices that are obviously measurable, and all of those kind of cool things. But I'm enormously curious, and so I enjoy, for example, listening to you in part because you bring a bunch of cultures together. And for the last, 15 years, every year I take a delegation of CHROs and TA leaders to a different country. So in 2 weeks, I'm going to Vietnam with 12 people.
Amazing.
We meet with ministers, we meet with professors, we meet with their students. We try to have a party with recruiters and HR partners, and we listen.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
About the things that you think. In fact, let me just retreat. With regards to artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
how big a deal is it?
It's as big a deal as, maybe a bigger deal than the internet coming in. The internet changed the vision of how the world operates. It took years, and there was plenty that was written about the internet and what it could be and the future of it in the 90s. But it didn't really exist. It was just conception, and the internet pretty much sucked. There was no Yahoo. Yahoo is maybe one of the first. There was no Google. There was no way to search. So what you had to do is buy books.
Yes.
You would buy paper books that would give you little URLs about where things were, but half of the time they'd already gone, etc. So there was this, we'll never sell cars on the internet. We'll never do this on the, all of that shifted, and we're in the same world today. There is a world coming that is different than the digital world, but no one really can envision it fully. But what we've got to do is embrace the practice. We got to learn. We have to get into it. I am very much a fan of reimagining what we can do and then looking at technology to scale it. I am not a fan of technology that becomes the driver in and of itself.
I think that is something a lot of people who have anxiety about AI probably tap into, the sense that the technology is driving the decision making rather than any considered sort of concept of, who is going to be interacting with the technology and who's going to be affected by it.
Absolutely. And if you really aren't embracing and trying to learn as much as you possibly can, then what you're doing is taking what AI is giving you and you're not arguing with it in any way, shape, or form. You don't have the wherewithal, the experience to be able to say, maybe we should be doing this a little bit different from that perspective. So you are, in fact, influencing your decisions or allowing yourself to be influenced by decisions that you should have had a much more should have had much more influence in terms of determining how they come about. We're also not paying attention to the decisions that the candidates will be making in the use of the same technology. I talk to my grandson who's 16 years old on a regular basis. Last year, he was getting in trouble. He's not allowed to use AI in high school, but he does, as does everybody else. And he was getting in trouble because he was getting answers without knowing how to get to the
Yep.
answers. Learned quickly, I better be asking ChatGPT to explain to me why that answer is a good answer and how I could do that on my own. So he began using the technology to teach himself better than he was learning in the classroom. Now, what he does is 3 of his classes, 60% is participation in class. So he's feeding AI what the teacher did today and asking AI to predict what the teacher will do tomorrow and what questions a 16-year-old, so he's learning how to prompt for himself, what a 16-year-old should be asking or answering in order to get that 60% as an A.
Really, really interesting.
And I'm going, I'm more optimistic
Yes.
at this point that kids who are taking responsibility to have access and are learning, they're going to get their hands slapped. But at the same time, a number of them are going to be in a position when work starts to really have a sense of what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to predict sort of the who's going to gain or lose from technology of this type.
Yep.
And it's going to be populations on both sides. You can divide people into age cohorts, but there's going to be winners and losers in every age cohort or any gender cohort or any of those descriptions. Kind of interested to get your thoughts on sort of the concept of unearned knowledge as your grandson discovered, and what that may mean to the world of work. So for instance, we're starting to get reports from managers being annoyed that they're getting this output from their junior staff that looks amazing, but the junior staff actually can't explain how they derived these outputs or whether it's a better sort of answer than one of the alternative opinions that are out there. How do we exactly sort of deal with this issue of young people can output great stuff, but we're not sure about their fundamentals?
I think in the end, fundamentals are going to be critical. So whether you start with answers and then provoke the learning around how those answers are derived so that we can imply different kinds of things and build different strategies. There's no strategy if you're just getting answers. If you're prompting an answer, but you don't know what the path is, you really aren't in a position, I think, to start thinking from a much more strategic point of view. And there will be plenty of people whose only capability is to get an output. Their jobs will be different. Their jobs won't pay as much. But the folks who can look at that path and start to develop and really embrace the technology in a variety of different ways are going to start seeing different ways that we could be making business, doing things, creating products, services, customers that we never thought existed. This whole idea of reimagining work has to apply in a focused way for TA. I mean, I think there's millions of things, but in TA, I'll give you just one. I think we need to reimagine the top of the funnel. Right now, the top of the funnel is 100, 200, whatever number we get applying to a job. But we only treat a very small fraction of that. So we keep on asking technology to refine this top of the funnel to that core of what we really should be looking at. But why wouldn't we use technology to do a better job of collecting the data from everyone in a way that's fair, is useful, and changes the perception of every candidate that they all get up to bat? Right now, only 5% at most get up to bat, or 1%. Tomorrow, why can't everyone get up to bat? It's just they're going to be getting up to bat with a non-human who obviously has to be a little bit better than what's there today. But why can't a non-human get to a point where they can say to the candidate, well, you're the 250th candidate that I've interviewed in the last 4 days. And I'm going to be able to interview you in the same way that I interviewed every single person before and every single person after. I'll be asking all the same questions, but I'll be probing your answers so that I better understand how to work with the humans that need to decide who goes forward. But we will give you feedback if you want.
So
And
you're talking.
everybody gets up to bat.
So what you're talking about here is less screening of resumes, more interviewing of all the candidates.
More collection of data in a different way.
Sure.
And then the screening, but more importantly is the transparency of why I'm doing it. Because you'd prefer to have a human. If I ask you, do you want a human or do you want a robot? But it's not that.
That's not always the case. But
I know. I think if you say, do you want a human or take your chances on nothing?
Yeah, I mean,
Then I'm going to go, I'll take whatever gets me up to bat and gives me a shot at competing for this job.
there's really good. Were you aware of a product called Tengai?
Yes.
Do you remember those the animatronic head?
And it was a robot part of a body in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken.
I love that thing.
Is that true?
It was a Swedish
it
product.
Sweden? Yeah.
Swedish product, and it was
I
literally
loved it.
animatronic head, and it was like they got rid of the robot head, and I was desperately
I know.
disappointed because I thought, you know what, the head was the entire thing because it viscerally demonstrated that actually certain people would prefer to speak to it.
Their study showed that people preferred that. They did it after the fact. They did ask the questions after the fact, but I talked to the founder, and I love the fact that she set the stage for expectation on the part of the candidate that everyone will come and have the same experience.
Right.
And so it's a fair experience.
Yeah, and what I like about Tengai, I'm not sure where they're at right now, but they, in my view, had a contribution at a very important moment.
They did. I agree with you 100%.
Because when we look back on it, we had this huge doubt about non-human interviews.
I remember telling people about it, and they were going, "You're nuts. That can never work." And I'm going, well, in the situation she's using it in, it seems to be working pretty damn well.
That's it. Big shout out to Tengai, by the way. Robot interviewing heads, they're brilliant. Okay, let's continue with the interview. What is one thing that is going to not change with regards to AI in the recruitment context? One thing that you think is actually, this is going to be persistent so long as we are recruiting human beings to get jobs and stuff.
It's a really good question. I'm not sure that there's anything that will remain exactly the same, but I believe that we will see a significant increase in the authenticity of both parties, because there will be so much data that is accessible. And if I can create a trusted, and that's the ideal for a great recruiter, creates a trust between themselves and the candidates that they're going forward with. And so they can get the kind of information that allows for good selection, not just by the employer, but the employer determines that you can do the job. And I think there's an increasing realization that that's really what the territory is for the employer. Can you do the job? But it's the candidate that needs to help make the choice as to whether they will do the job, well, based on the kind of world that they're in, the stage in life that they're in, and their knowledge of what their aspirations are.
I think that's the question between sort of, can you do the job? Do you want to do the job? They're the only two questions you really need to have answered.
Yeah, it's just who has to ask that question.
Yeah.
I think we need, and I think AI is going to help the candidates look in the mirror more effectively to be able to answer that question of, will I do this job?
I think you're so right, because one of the problems with traditional job discovery is that it forces the candidate to have like knowledge as to what jobs are out there. We don't have that, so we just type in job titles that we think we identify with. However, there's going to be a massive number of opportunities out there that would be ideally suited for that person. They just have never encountered that job.
I can ask my agent as the candidate, how many people has this, now that I've met you, how many people has hired in the last 5 years that look like me, and where are they now? That might be a question I want to know.
They're all underneath the
That data is physically there, and might be more accessible.
Yes.
In a way that's constructive. Because if I ask you that question, it's awkward, makes you feel uncomfortable about it. But it's less awkward if I'm looking or talking to a representation of you.
Yes.
As a starting point, and we're talking about some of the things that I'd be interested in. Does that make sense to you?
It doesn't entirely, Gerry, but I want to ask you another question.
Sure.
I think the audience wants to know about this. Is there a robo Gerry Crispin? Like, where is this thing?
No.
No?
No.
Not interested in creating a digital version of yourself to continue to provide wisdom to the community?
The moment you do that, it's a static thing that exists. And I tend to feel that I continue to evolve.
That's a very good point.
I have the highest value in what am I learning now?
Yes.
Just sitting here with you. And I got to tell you, the only reason a 78-year-old is still playing in this game is that reason. So from a values and a mission point of view, I want to be able to learn as much as I can and contribute to whatever we need to do. I want to contribute to a world I want to live in.
Yes.
I know how hard that is, and I know that in the end it's kind of not that easy. And right now we're kind of moving a step back. But the point of being around is more values and mission sensitive than it is, I have this, brilliant idea for a startup or something to that effect.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And
Stage of life is a big deal.
That's fantastic, Gerry. We obviously need to have more stories, and we're going to have those, but we have to come to a close with this interview, simply because there's so many more people that obviously want to have a chat with you. But Gerry Crispin, wonderful to have a chat with you here at RecFest USA.
You bet. Take care.